Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Faster, my good evening. It's 5:30. This is Update for Friday, 12th of January 2024 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes looking at the latest news on the Isle of Man and background to the news with sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates and the newsmakers in person. This evening, the South's been betrayed, says an MHK. The Newson's development appeal has been refused. No firm opening date for the Liverpool ferry terminal. £40,000 on lighting for the Douglas Promenade Wall. And the Ravens on the road in Lancashire tomorrow.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Fastamai, Christian Jones.
Fastamai. The Education, Sport and Culture Minister Julie Edge has described a recommendation to close the southern swimming pool as a very difficult situation. Her department believes the move could save in excess of £400,000 a year, but it's caused outrage among some of her political colleagues. The Steam Packet says it can't commit to a firm date for the opening of the new ferry terminal in Liverpool. It's after UK media has reported it could welcome the first passengers through its doors from the end of March, and the Trafalgar Hotel in Ramsey has been named a runner-up in the campaign for Real Ale's National Pub of the Year competition. Atmosphere, service and quality of beer were scrutinised among others as part of the judging process. In international news, two opposition politicians say Parliament should have been recalled before the UK and US attacked Houthi targets in Yemen. Meanwhile, the UK Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, is not ruling out further strikes on the Iran-backed militants. Rishi Sunak has signed a new security agreement with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The UK has pledged £2.5 billion in military aid this year. And Annie Nightingale, Radio 1's first female DJ, has died aged 83. The BBC says she was a pioneer and a trailblazer. Those are the Update News headlines. Next at 6.
Secure tomorrow today with Man Benham's guidance on powers of attorney and more. Manx Radio weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Garamaya, thank you, Christian. From the Ronaldsway Met Office, no wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea smooth or slight. And the Manxman is now safely into the inner harbour. The weather this evening, dry and cloudy and a light northwesterly. Overnight minimum 3 degrees Celsius for Jasan. Possible drizzle first thing in a moderate westerly. Bright spells after lunch in a northwesterly. Daylight maximum 8 down to 3 through the night into Jaduni. Showery start to Sunday. Drying up later in a moderate to fresh northerly. Top temperature 6 degrees Celsius. Low water in about 40 minutes time. It's 16 minutes past 6. High tide 18 minutes after midnight. Low water 20 to 7 tomorrow morning. Sunrise 29 minutes before 9 and the lunchtime high water 29 minutes to 1.
Manx Glass and Glazing are able to offer an emergency out-of-hours boarding up service. Call 491918.
The people of the South should feel betrayed by their government, according to one MHK, after plans to close the southern swimming pool were revealed. Education, Sport and Culture Minister Julie Edge, MHK, says it's a very difficult decision and insists those in the South will still have access to a pool. Juan Watterson, the Speaker of the House of Keys, is one of the members for Rushen.
Absolutely furious and, if anything, somewhat betrayed by the government. I think the people of the South should feel thoroughly let down by the government at this stage. Not only have they been completely unable to make any meaningful progress on a secondary school, which we were promised years ago, another kick in the teeth now with the idea that they are going to close the southern swimming pool as well. Loads of options unconsidered. However, they seem to wish to press ahead without even really thinking about it. And it just strikes me as being a completely unfair way of approaching the whole problem. One of those options is that the good people of the east of the island don't pay towards swimming pools at all. This is a national issue with local provision, and the rate income that could be generated through that equality of swimming pool rate across the island would raise a further sort of probably at least £1,000 to help go towards this problem. I do think this is a national issue, and yet there are also another 2 swimming pools in addition to the NSC in Douglas, one at Ballacameen that the Department of Education is happy to pay and prop up whilst closing a facility in the south of the island. So I just don't think that all of the options have really fairly been considered. I think that the people of the south should feel betrayed by the government at this stage, given the lack of progress on a high school that was known about the need for 8 years ago, the fact that we're now closing down this facility. I appreciate as much as anyone that money is tight, but I don't think this is any way to run a country.
Douglas Council's agreed to spend £40,000 on decorative lighting, which will be set into art panels in the new promenade seawall. Councillor Falk Horning says the promenade's a focal point and it's provided lighting for similar projects.
Douglas City Council is a public lighting authority in the city, so it is consistent with other installations that we've done, for example, in the cultural area, that we have provided the funding for the lighting there. Of course, all the lighting in other projects like the statues and so on, we've done that, so it is consistent with that.
40,000 is a lot of money for what some people might just see as decorative lighting. Where is this money coming from?
It is from underspend in that department, so we've got underspend because we didn't have enough manpower recently, so we couldn't do all the projects that we wanted to do, and some of that money from the maintenance pot will come into this project here. These parts, if it doesn't all go in a timely manner within the next 1.5 years, then the parts can be reused in other projects, so they're of a very general nature. While £40,000 is a lot of money, it is Promenade, which is focal point for the city. It is where many of the social events are held. This is where you take your family out for some ice cream and where you would enjoy yourself on an afternoon, and where you take your visitors when they come to the island. So it is a focal point, and £40,000 in this instance makes sense. There were many people who said that the seawall is going to aesthetically negatively impact the promenade, which with the first planning application would have been the case. Then the DOI has put in a better planning application with art installations, and we are basically following this trend that we have asked for better installations that is more better aesthetically attractive by agreeing to the funding for lighting.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
For the first time since early November, the Ravens are on the road in the NWCFL Premier Division tomorrow when they face Padiham on the outskirts of Burnley. FC Alaman's boss Paul Jones is confident the side can produce a good response to their spectacular collapse at home against Charnock Richard last weekend.
We've not reflected on it too much. I don't think you can look too much into 4 minutes of football, so we're remembering about the good stuff that we did and what got us into that kind of 2-0 lead and how we reacted reasonably positively once the mad kind of 4 to 10 minute spell had occurred. We've had a little bit of reflections on how we can maybe control those moments a little bit better and make sure we're in control of our emotions and then our actions should things like that happen again. The journey for the group is to find ways to reset quicker and to make sure that whether they can do that as an individual and also as a group, that one mistake shouldn't define a game, whether you're a goalkeeper or whether you're a centre forward, and you've just got to keep going back to what you do well and what the team does well and keep delivering that on a consistent basis no matter what is happening outside the game, whether that's a referee decision or a miss or a mistake or whatever the opposition might be trying to do to put us off. Then we've just got to be much more focused in terms of what we are in control of, and I think if we can get back to doing that, we'll be in a good place. We're creating more chances than we have, so as long as we can keep doing that, I know that we will have those opportunities. It's ensuring that we finish off the chances that we have within the game, and we're really kind of resilient out of possession to restrict a Padiham team that I wouldn't say they've surprised us after we played them at home. I thought we dominated that game and deservedly won that game, but they've found a rhythm and found a rich vein of form, and they're able to pick a very consistent starting 11 and group, and that's helped them to find a really good rhythm, and they're getting some good results, so they'll be playing with lots of confidence. We're more than a match for any team in this division when we turn up for 95 minutes. And I expect, because of how well we know the group, to have a reaction.
Good evening, Fastamai. It's 20 to 6 this Friday evening, live from Douglas in the Isle of Man on Manx Radio. This is Update. Plans to demolish and redevelopment the former Newson's building on North Quay in Douglas have been refused again following appeal. Here's Lewis Foster.
The proposals to turn the registered building site into a block of 10 apartment and 3 bar/restaurant units were originally refused in September 2022, with an appeal launched just days later on the 4th of October. The former warehouse is made up of 2 buildings dating back to 1786, which are said to be important survivors, illustrating the development of Douglas's quayside and emerging industry of trade. When the initial application was refused, planning officers said the building in its current state could be preserved. At the time, Kell Properties hit out at what it saw as an injustice in allowing our side, it said, to only speak for a timed 3 minutes, and yet 5 members of the planning team, together with their consultant and also several public members, were allowed to speak constantly against the plans. The reason for refusal from the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture now states, notwithstanding its general condition, sufficient justification for demolition of the registered building has not been demonstrated. Moreover, the design of the proposed redevelopment, which includes demolition of numbers 22, 23, 25 and 26 North Quay, as well as demolition of the registered building, is not of sufficient quality to preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the North Quay conservation area, which would be harmed. Kelman Limited has 3 months to challenge the decision by lodging a petition of dolliance.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Motor vessel Manxman left Heysham at 9 minutes past 2. She's safely on the link span in Douglas Harbour now, discharging and recharging, and off at 7:45 this evening to Heysham, arriving at 11:30. The 02:15 overnight departure from Heysham arrives in Douglas at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, and the morning departure for Manxman, 8 o'clock, heading to Heysham.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
And talking of the steam packet, apparently the packet says it can't commit to a firm date for the opening of the new ferry terminal in Liverpool. It's after reports in UK media says it could welcome the first passengers through the doors at the end of March. The story from Amy Griffiths.
In a statement, Managing Director Brian Thompson says they're excited about the hoped improved passenger experience, but have to be realistic about timelines. The company says the project is nearing completion, but there are still a number of tests to do. It's hoped the first berth fit trials will take place in early March, with the Manannan set to be the first vessel to attempt mooring there. If that goes to plan, SPC says it expects to be in a position to undertake mooring trials and familiarisation towards the end of March. This is said to be quite an intensive set of manoeuvres, needing vessels to be brought alongside at all states of tide and in different weather conditions, so a full picture can be built for the risk assessments and safety management system. The Manannan is set to be running from Liverpool at the end of March, and while it's hoped it will be from the new terminal, there is a contingency plan for sailings to take place via the existing facilities if work's not finished. The Manxman's expected to visit the new terminal for trials in April, with its first passenger sailing planned for November. Mr Thompson says all being well, they're on schedule to commence operations in the spring, but until the berth fit has taken place and the trials have started, they won't be in a position to commit to a firm date for the first passenger sailing. He admits it's been a bigger project than most people expected, and a lot has changed since it started. Mr Thompson says one thing that's changed is the commercial underpinnings, and they've been working with the Department of Infrastructure to re-evaluate the heads of terms that were signed early on in the process. He believes those talks are going well, and they should be in a position to sign off on the lease shortly, which will allow work to start within the terminal and around the facility to welcome passengers as soon as possible.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, Air Astana, the flag carrier of Kazakhstan, expects to go ahead with its initial public offering on both the London and Kazakh stock exchanges, which will likely come alongside a sale of existing shares and a global depository receipt held by the BAE Systems. The offering will include an issue of new shares and those GDRs, in addition to the sale of those held by BAE Systems and the Kazakh Sovereign Wealth Fund. And for a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. UK pub chain JD Wetherspoon signed an exclusive agreement with Bourne Leisure's Haven Holidays to operate at its parks. Haven runs 38 parks in the UK, and the first on-site pub will open at Primrose Valley in Filey, North Yorkshire in March. Haven's Chief Operating Officer Peter Blake says they're the first holiday provider to partner with Wetherspoons. Haven was acquired by Blackstone in 2021 and has invested more than £170 million in its parks over the past year. The Wetherspoon deal is part of an additional £4 million investment to improve food and beverage offering.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets closed higher as investors digested fresh UK economic data. The dollar index gave up earlier gains. Oil rose as the US and Britain carried out strikes against Houthi military targets in Yemen, and gold eased as hawkish remarks from the Fed fueled worries that higher interest rates could stay unchanged beyond March. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close in London: the FTSE 100 up 0.6%, 7,624. The DAX in Frankfurt up almost 0.9% at the close, 16,690. A short time ago, New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial is down 0.4%, 37,562. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index up just over 0.1% at 14,986. The S&P 500 in Chicago up 0.07%, barely 0.1% at 4,783. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling trading at $1 27.4 cents and €1 16.2 cents. In commodities, gold's up just over 1 percentage point at $2,051 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude up slightly 0.08% at $78.39.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Isle of Man Water Sports. Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Here's the relevant information this weekend. If you're sailing, kayaking, windsurfing, paddleboarding, sea swimming, diving or surfing, sea temperature 10 degrees Celsius. And for Saturday, tomorrow, the wind is west or northwesterly, force 3 or 4, veering north or northwesterly in the afternoon. Wave height less than half a metre, wave period 2 to 4 seconds. High tide, midday, and for Sunday the 14th, the wind is northerly or northwesterly, force 3 or 4, increasing northerly, force 5 or 6, wave height less than half a metre, wave period 3 to 4 seconds, high tide Sunday afternoon at 1:20.
Manx Glass and Glazing are proud to be an approved contractor with Construction Isle of Man. Call the team on 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate. Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates.
An Onchan resident's been jailed for almost 10 years after stabbing a man in an horrific attack which caused the victim to have 2 of his ribs removed. At Douglas Courthouse, Tessa Hawley.
Callum Thomas Radcliffe, formerly of School Road, stabbed the man on the 16th of March 2022. 7 months later, whilst on bail for the offence, he carried out an aggravated burglary. At Douglas Courthouse, the 33-year-old's offending was described as horrific. Radcliffe was found guilty of wounding the man and causing him grievous bodily harm following a trial last year. A victim impact statement read out during the sentencing hearing described how he'd spent a number of weeks in hospital after the attack and had sustained large scars as a result. "I can't do the things I enjoy," the victim told the court. "I feel like a shell of my former self." The man revealed he'd been left with a hernia the size of a football and had suffered from anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder and had become paranoid and untrusting. A victim impact statement from the man whose home Radcliffe burgled in the early hours of the 29th of October 2022 was also read to the court. It was a charge he'd previously pleaded guilty to. The court heard Radcliffe had entered the property in Royal Court in Onchan armed with a knife and hammer and stole cannabis. His actions, the victim said, had had changed him as a person. He told the court he struggled to leave the house or socialise and his mental health had been affected. Radcliffe's advocate told the court her client had been dragged into the burglary by someone else and added the stabbing was not premeditated. Sending Radcliffe to prison for 9 years and 4 months, Deemster Graham Cook told him, "You have a serious history of violence going back many years. These 2 offences were horrific."
Manx Radio Sport.
Fast am I, Rob Pritchard.
Fast am I. Good evening. Starting with football, and the race remains firmly on at the top of the Canada Live Men's Premier League going into the latest Isle of Man football fixtures this weekend. Top of the table Peel travel to St John's this evening for a Friday night clash, whilst Ayr United, level with Peel on points and with a game in hand, are looking to bounce back from their first defeat of the season last weekend when they host Douglas Royal on Saturday. League ties across the division will get underway at 2 p.m. tomorrow. There's also 3 rearranged ECAP FA Cup preliminary round ties, which start slightly earlier at 1:15. In rugby, Douglas will be hoping to keep up their recent impressive form when they travel to Whitchurch in Regional 2 North West tomorrow afternoon. Recent results have lifted the Manx side up the standings, and they face a Whitchurch team they've already beaten this campaign. Manx Radio's rugby correspondent Dave Christian thinks, given their latest performances, Douglas can start to think bigger for the rest of the season.
3 back-to-back wins now have pushed them well away from the bottom end of the table. Whitchurch only just ahead of Douglas in the table. They've beaten them at home. Let's see if they can do it away.
Elsewhere, Vagabonds travel to face Marple in Counties 4 ADM Lancs Cheshire on Saturday, whilst there'll be 2 games locally in the Ravenscroft Bank Shield, Ramsey versus Southern Nomads and Western Vikings versus Castletown. And after some dramatic results in last weekend's opening day fixtures, week 2 of the latest men's and ladies Manx hockey season takes place throughout Saturday. Among the headlines last weekend, reigning champions in the respective Premier Leagues, Castletown Ladies A and Bacchus Men's A both suffered defeats. The latter of those 2 face Castletown Men's A tomorrow in the Men's Premier League. Manx Radio's hockey correspondent Ben Cunningham thinks Bacchus will have a task on their hands to try and bounce back.
I really can't pick a winner out of this one. I think this could be a stalemate. Both Castletown and Bacchus, of course, Bacchus lost last weekend. Castletown got a good start to their season and will definitely have their heads up high. Bacchus will definitely want to make amends.
You can see a full list of tomorrow's Isle of Man hockey fixtures at manxradio.com.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Inbound up Ronald's Way, the 5:25 Loganair from Manchester came in a quarter of an hour early. The 5:28 Loganair from Liverpool, returning patient transfer plane, is on time. Then it's the 8 o'clock Loganair from London City showing on time. Just one departure tonight. The 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool is showing on time. On the roads, resurfacing work at Braddon Bridge. Well, weekdays the road is one way heading east into Douglas from Braddon Bridge round about to Quarterbridge. West out of Douglas, diversion onto the Newcastle Town Road and Saddle Road. And at weekends, so from tomorrow, Braddon Bridge is closed in both directions from 8 o'clock tomorrow till about 4:30 Sunday afternoon, dependent on progress made. It may be later in the day if necessary. Diversion signs in place. All the details at manxradio.com. In Douglas, Hillside Avenue is closed through to Circular Road for adjacent office window replacement, and a section of Switzerland Road is closed till November for construction work. Still those temporary lights on Lord Street between the bus station and Duke Street for scaffolding work. In Santon, Money Road's closed for drainage work. In Colby, phase closures on the Ballakill Ferry Road until June for water main work. Temporary lights on King Edward Road in Oncombe between Groudle and the A2 for trial pit work. In the north, Kindrogad Road in Andros closed in phases for water main work. South of Kirkmichael, temporary closures on the Ballalai Road for water main work. Silverdale Road is closed between the Ballamoda and the Fildraw Road for resurfacing work. And off-road, the Heritage Trails closed between Crosby and Glenvine for duct insulation work.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Quayside. And check it on the Matrix signs this evening. There is no problem on the mountain road. Thanks for tuning in to Manx Radio, and you're part of a growing band of listeners on the Isle of Man and elsewhere who've been kind enough to say they like and enjoy half an hour of nothing but Manx news and often listen to a week's worth of updates as podcast to get a flavour of the Isle of Man. We really appreciate it. Politicians are continuing to react to the bumper review published this week in the island's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Garth MHK Daphne Kane says the main main lessons she thinks government need to take on board concern the island's schools and government's record keeping.
I think some of the recommendations are really good, but I think there are some fundamental points for government to take back, not least document creation being professional and the filing systems to be better. You know, having brought a motion towards the back end of last year for the Public Record Office to get the Council of Ministers papers in due course, you know, you'd worry that that's going to be an impossible task for the future Public Records Officer to sift through and put in some sort of order so that people who want to research a particular time 25 years ago or plus would be able to locate all the papers that related to that. But on the COVID review, we are now waiting, I suppose, and government will be coming up with their response to this report. But I could see already that in terms of the education element, that's a particular interest to me. The report has found that there hasn't been enough done for the lost COVID generation in schools, that there should be, in my mind, some COVID catch-up budget support for, and also the quality assessment of schools is very critical. Not only must that come in for all our benefit on all schools, but also for the online learning element that will be a future offering, because it says the 2 to 3% per year chance of another pandemic means that we are going to face one in this short or long term. You know, there will be another pandemic and we need to be ready and prepared. And I think the single biggest failing seems to have been the dismantling of the gold control. And I think for any emergency planning increase that needs to go on now, it shouldn't have come down to one emergency planning officer, and the gold control needed to be in force so that everybody had the input of the relevant information and Council of Ministers had the benefit of that when they were making their decisions.
That's it for Update Tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Christian Jones, producer Amy Griffiths. After the news at 6 o'clock, Rob Pritchard, our sports editor's here with Friday Sport. Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley at 6:30. Howie Kane, Sweet and Swing Jazz at 9. Dave Moore with After Hours at 10. Have a great weekend. Updates back Monday at 5:30.
WIN